Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and my name is Muhammad Azmi and I'm from UDE 19. I'm here to talk about my introduction about movie review. The film that I'm going to review is 12 Years of Slave, directed by Steve McQueen, and the screenplay was written by John Ridley. This is a biographical period drama film and adapted of the 1853 slave memoir by Solomon Nawab, a New York State-born free African American who was kidnapped by two conmen in Washington, D.C. in 1841 and sold him to slavery. This film was released on 8th of November 2013 in USA. There are many famous stars who are acting in this film, such as Chiwetel Ejiofor played the main character in this film as Solomon Nawab, Michael Fassbender, Benedict Cumberbatch, Paul Dano, and Brad Pitt. They play as the supporting roles in this film. This film was officially announced on August 2011. This film's production budget was $22 million. This film was well received by the audience as well as the critics and named the best film of 2013. This film was earned over $188 million at the box office against the production value $22 million. This film also received 9 Academy Award nominations and winning 3 such as Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, and the Best Supporting Actress for Lupita Nyong'o. The Best Picture win made McQueen the first Black American producer and director to win it. This film also awarded the Golden Globe Award for the Best Motion Picture. The British Academy of Film and Television Arts recognized it with the Best Film and the Best Actor for the Ejiofor. 12 Years of a Slave was named 44th greatest of all time film since 2000 and BBC poll of 177 critics. That's all for my introduction.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Hanisa. I'm from UD Section 3. So I'll be explaining about the slavery, and as in what exactly slavery is and what kind of relation does it has to do with ethics, and how does the religion plays in role with the ethics, and connections with slavery as well. Alright, so start off with what slavery stands for. So slavery is basically a dual way of connection. So basically we have a buyer, we have a seller. So in between is the goods. So goods in this scenario is the slaves. So this person would want to purchase the slaves from the seller. And these people, they don't have freedoms or whatsoever. They don't really have any authorization for their own life. So based from the movie 12 Years of Slave, there are a few ethical issues we can actually go through with. So starting off with how slaves are conducted, the way of slaves are treated. So slaves are treated no different from like how they treat a animal. Like they would call the slaves like, hey boy, come here boy, something like that. So when a slave does not do their job rightly, as they do not follow per instructions, in this movie they are whipped as to mean to discipline them. So the owners make full use of the slaves in terms of making constructions or the field works. So in terms of construction, so the ones we can relate in this movie is we can see the slaves were making a penthouse. So basically there is a person who would look after them. So he kind of like bullies them, or he just doesn't feel satisfied with what they do. He would always find the wrongs and everything. Right, so moving on to the religious context of slavery here. So about Islam and Christianity, these two religions has a different kind of viewpoint. So starting off with Islam. So Islam does not encourage slavery, where a Muslim cannot slave another Muslim. That's a big no, and that goes against Sharia law. And as for Christianity, their main source is Bible. So Bible, we can say there is a Old Testament and New Testament. So based on Old Testament, it says that slavery is just a common thing. They tend to ignore, people just do what they want. And as for the New Testament, they do consider that slavery is not an appropriate act and everything, but some has the idea of saying that it's actually a wise thing to treat a slave as like that, because or else we can't say a slave to be they're trying to say that if we give too much space to the slave, they might get overboard and go retaliation against their owners. So why is slavery is not considered as a right thing to do? So one thing is, obviously we can say that it takes the happiness of a human being. So basically a human being does not get to be what they wanted. They don't get their happiness from that. Second is they don't get their own rights, especially among the slaves. They don't get to have obligations in their own life. They are not free to do anything. In this movie we can relate that this woman actually went to a person's house, but then she was caught by her owner, and then he accused her for as being a traitor. But she said, I just went to their house to just get a cotton ball, so they know that's just a normal thing. But then in the end she got whipped. Regardless of thinking that she's a woman, he didn't go easy on her. He was being a heartless owner. So in context, right now we think that slavery is not really a good thing. It's not really a conducive act. It's not really a healthy thing. But then back in those days, they think as a common thing, which we can't really relate of why, because they have a different kind of mindset so as we. That's just how things goes. Right now we think slavery is not really a good thing. It's just a negative thing. But back in those days, they think it is a right thing. So context of mindset are different as the eras of evolutions and stuff. So yeah, I guess that's it from me about the ethical issues from.
And I shall be talking about the types of slavery that was present in 12 Years a Slave. So the first type of slavery that was shown is forced labor. So this is shown as Solomon Northup, a free black man born in Saratoga Springs, New York, was tricked and drugged and hence sold to a slave trade, and then brought to New Orleans under the name Pratt, a runaway slave from Georgia. He was sold to a man named Ford, and he was forced to do labor work like all the other slaves who were forced to work in the cotton plantations under the scorching sun and weather. The other type of slavery shown is forced child labor. When Solomon Northup is almost killed in Ford's plantation, he is then sold to another slave owner named Epps. Now, Epps used to rape his slaves, and the child of the slave back then, it was a rule, it was a law actually, that said the child of the slave is the property of the slave owner. So when these childs often reached the ages 5 or 6, they were then forced to work in the cotton plantations alongside their mothers and the other workers. The next type of slavery that was present in the film was the debt bondage, was the bonded labor or debt bondage. Now this worked as when the mother or when the slave died, typically when the woman slave died, the child, if that woman slave had a child, that child would take over the mother's place in the cotton fields. So that is bonded labor, debt bondage, as where if one person dies, that the next of kin of that family is forced to take over whatever the person was doing. And this was very common in Epps' cotton field and back in the day. Another type of slavery that was present is sex trafficking. Even though the women, right, they were only sold as slaves, they were also raped and sexually abused. And this is also for slave trafficking, as some of the slave owners bought these women to pimp them out. That is all from me. Thank you.
I'm Madhunisha, UD Section 3. Today I'm going to proceed with my part, the morality based on the film 12 Years of Slave, directed by Steve McQ, and the screenplay was written by John Radley. The first morality I found this movie is, when one's unique talent fails to matter. This scene clear by when Salman's own first in maintaining his life is not to confess his skill and his ability to anyone he knows. He discovers quiet soon that he can believe that kidnap story, and he will be rewarded for the bold belief that he is alive. Besides that, an educated slave is perceived as a threat and influence that treat differently and harshly, meaning that special is the talent creates to matter in the brutal setting. Next morality is courage to live instead of just survival. There is a quiet inner power which Salman carrying him through his forced service attitude. He appears constantly advised how to survive selfishly and live his past life. Salman bent to the survive need by not disclosing his true identity, ability or family, but never lack the confidence to live instead of survival. The gift violent comforted him for a while. Salman knows that his rightful place is a return to his family and his freedom he ignored to let go of that life. Last morality from this movie is not falling into despair when surrounded by nothing but despair. The desperate emotion is centered to 12 years of a slave. Slave laborers live in shackles as much by hardship as by chain and wheels lashing, and the cruel work and power of their boss and property owner gradually wipes out the limit hope and bonds they have had over time as real men and women. With no hope of escape, shelter or freedom before the Civil War, slaves on hard plantation had very little to live for, even to the point getting one another mean little and only contribute to despair. This is another feeling Salman refused to embrace, like living.
My metric number is UDE 190169. Today, or right now, I'm going to present about abolitionism of slavery. Abolitionism or abolitionist movement was the movement to end slavery. Abolitionism was historic movement in Western Europe and America, which is sought to end the Atlantic slave trade and to set slave free. As the name says, the abolitionist is a person who tried to abolish slavery in 19th century. This individual was specifically sought the immediate and complete emancipation of all slaves. The most early abolitionists were white religious Americans, but the most influential figures were black men and women that were fled from slavery. Slavery was seen by the abolitionists as abomination and affliction on the United States. They are making it their mission to abolish slave ownership. Their submit letter to Congress took the political office and overwhelmed the people of South with literature against slavery. Such ordained activities sought to fully eradicate slavery. Many Americans were hard to support the abolitionism, including free and former slaves. The most famous abolitionists were William Lloyd Garrison. He is very influential early abolitionist. He published a journal called The Liberator to advocate the unconditional emancipation of all women and men who were slaves. Based on the film 12 Years of Slavery by Steve McQueen, the scene that I can conclude in the movie that are related with the abolitionists is when Solomon meet the Canadian abolitionist that called Samuel Best that will forever alter his life, and by getting a letter from Solomon to New York. And from the film epilogue that have say about Solomon become active in abolitionist movement and lecture on slavery throughout the northern United States, and he aided fugitive slaves on the Underground Railroad. That's all from me. Thank you.
I'm Subramaniam from UDE Section 3. Today I'm going to talk about the conclusion for the movie 12 Years of Slave. In conclusion, the movie 12 Years of Slave has many real lessons from its history. It does have some added details that the director decided to add, such as a sex scene between Solomon and woman. However, it is based on the real Solomon Northup's autobiography and his experience being kidnapped in New York and sold as a slave in Louisiana. The film clearly shows the reality of the slaves, the Fugitive Slave Act, the racism and discrimination of the time, and the horrible experiences of African and African American slaves in the United States. Solomon Northup was physically and psychologically abused for 12 years, whipped, and could have been killed. However, he survived and he was able to share his story with the rest of the world, even nowadays. Thank you.